Hello, today is Sunday, the 18th of October of 2020. My name is Alania Rodriguez, and I am interviewing Arielle Pizano for the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ms. Pizano, that this interview will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at UT Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there's something you do want to talk about, please bring it up and we will talk about it. Because we're not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting, so I'll ask a series of 5 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on.
Okay.
Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. Do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Benson Library?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
If any one of those questions is no, then the deal is off, but hopefully you will have discussed this beforehand. Sorry. We will have many questions in a pre-interview form that we will have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure VOSA server. Before we send it to the Benson, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or your family members, so that will not be a part of your public file. Your
Okay.
public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in the public file to be available for researchers at the Benson?
Yes. That's totally fine.
On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you wish to give us consent to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
That's fine.
Okay, let's get into the interview. So, Ariel, can you tell me about yourself?
Sure. I am 28 years old. I am currently working 2 jobs. Since a little girl, I have always loved dancing, and it's always been one of my outlets to truly express myself, where writing or even acting didn't fill, but dancing was that one where I knew that no matter what I'm doing, I could easily express and show how I felt and really put how they say, my soul into things.
And how did you first learn about COVID-19 and when did you realize the severity of it?
I first learned about COVID-19 through my work, through the library. We started noticing a lot more emails about it from the higher ups and how to be cautious. And then slowly our customers were wearing masks before we were told to be locked down. And then one day we just get an email mid-March telling us that we would not be allowed to go back to work due to COVID-19. And that's how I knew, like, this is something very serious and not something to just be very blasé about.
And how has the pandemic affected your everyday life?
It's affected it in many ways. I love to see my family. My mom, for one, she was going through dialysis. She was immunocompromised. And, she loved hugging. She loved to be around us. And one of the things they tell you is to not really, be around them, to help them. So from one day to the next, from like being able to hug and love on my mom to the next, kind of being cold. But it wasn't because we wanted to be mean, but it was because it was for her health. And I tutor for Victory, and not seeing my little mentee that I would see on a daily basis and help her out. And because not only would I help her with her homework, I would also help her if she had a struggle at school mentally, or she was just not having a good day. And work, library. Our library specifically is program based, one-on-one with the customers, engaging. Um, and that just, like, all these programs that we had planned, have now been canceled, and our one way to reach to our community was cut off, and we had to find a different way to serve our community that isn't through one of our number one thing, which is one-on-one customer engagement. So having to learn to grow resources to still do my job and let them know that though I am not physically there at the branch at the time, I am still trying to find things to connect with them. And and yeah, it's just really, and like mentally, not being able to really go out and I guess you can say I'm kind of an extrovert, and I thrive with communication and bonding with people. And now being told I have to stay home, I can't be around those who I love, and just it was a really hard adjustment.
And from the beginning of the pandemic to now, what do you feel has become the new normal for you?
The new normal for me is wear a mask, um, and and just and just literally trying to find the the motivation to keep going every day. Um, Going to work, not being able to be near my coworkers, being in my own little separate bubble in a sense. Um, Instead of making pit stops on the way home to work from work, it's literally, I feel like it's monotony. Go home, go to work, wear a mask, go home. And that's what it seems like it's my new normal. Just same thing over and over again, and hearing the news. Like that's it.
So you mentioned wearing a mask is something you do. Are there any other safety precautions that you try and take?
Yeah, I try. Social distancing is a very important thing to do right now, even though some say it doesn't matter. I try and I keep my social circle very small, mainly my immediate family, my sisters, and my brother. But even then, we don't see each other much often. Um, and my husband, and who I live with, which is my two other brother-in-laws. So really, I don't really like to go out to restaurants. Do a lot of curbside pickup, do delivery. I will go into the store if I drastically need it, if it's an actual grocery emergency, or even with prescriptions. I work in a pharmacy. So if I know I'm working that day at the pharmacy, I will make sure my prescription is ready the day that I go into work, so that I don't have to make extra trips just for that, and have a risk of exposing myself or others. So, yeah.
And did you contract COVID-19 at any point, or did anybody in your family?
I did. It was, I got it, my husband, one of my brother in laws, uh, three of my siblings, and my sister in law, and one of my best friends. We all contracted COVID-19. Um, and all of our experiences were very different. Um, Unfortunately, two of my siblings had to be hospitalized. I thankfully was able to stay home along with my husband, because we were both quarantining together. Um, yeah, my brother works for a hospital, and he got it from working in a hospital. My best friend got it from um, her younger brother, and let's just say COVID-19 is something that I unfortunately got to know very well.
And do you still feel any side effects or after testing negative?
I do. Um, my breathing. Some people say that they recover very quickly. Unfortunately for me, whatever damage I got to my lungs has stayed. It's not as bad as it was, but there's times where I am doing very small tasks, like just moving an average maybe 10, 15 pound box with stuff for work to a staging area, and I'm out of breath. Something that I was able to do with ease before, and now I really have to monitor my breathing. I have to have my oximeter with me to make sure my oxygen's okay, because I will start to feel lightheaded and out of breath.
And what other symptoms when you had COVID? What were your symptoms like?
I had sorry, my family came in. It's okay. Ugh, sorry. And my dog came in. I am so sorry for this. What happens when you live with family? So one of the symptoms that I had with COVID was fever and body aches, and I lost my sense of taste and my sense of smell. How I figured out I had the loss of taste was shortly after I would eat something. It literally tasted like it was either rancid or it tasted like dirt. Um, it was very it was very eye opening because you only hear about that symptom, and when it happens to you, it really affects you, and you try to all these smells that you used to be able to enjoy, like a candle or fresh baked cookies, like it none of that, because I'm a big foodie, so none of that was it was just really downing my mood. And the fevers, I run cold, so typically I am at a 97.6, but unfortunately, my fevers would reach 100, 101. I would be the typical hot and cold. My whole body would hurt. Even just the breeze of a fan to help cool me off would hurt. So I would have to cover myself in the softest of blankets, um, and make sure that it wasn't directly touching my skin because it would hurt. So I was only able to wear super big loose clothing and big fluffy blankets, because if I wore, let's say, a regular t-shirt, just having that pressure on my body was enough to make me hurt and just not want to move. Um, there was a point where my heart rate was really high because my oxygen would go low. I think the highest it went during COVID, it was 155 heart rate, I believe, is what I saw on the oximeter. And my oxygen wasn't reflecting that of someone who's working out, or it was 94, 93, and my heart rate was so high. And the headaches, it was worse than a migraine. And I would have to have all the lights shut off and try and sleep. But it was weird because though I was really tired, I just couldn't sleep. Either the pain would keep me awake or the constant change of hot and cold would keep me awake. My body wanted to sleep, my body wanted to rest, but I just couldn't.
And at what point during the pandemic did you contract the virus? What month was it? Around what time?
It was in July. I remember July 3rd. I had unfortunately just buried my mother on July 1st. And after her services, I started feeling a little sick. And I remember just having a really bad headache and an upset stomach. And I was like, okay, that's just stress from what just happened. And then on July 3rd is when a huge wave of fever came. And I was like, okay, this isn't just stress. This has to be something else. And that's when I went to the doctor, and I gave her my symptoms, and she already knew. She's like, you, by the sounds, you have COVID. We're going to administer this COVID test. you'll get your results within, at the time, 7 to 14 days. But I really couldn't wait for the results because my job for the library wanted to know. So I ended up going with the Austin Public Health testing site, and I got my results within 2 days. And when I got my results of positive, it was like a worst nightmare coming true.
And how long did you have COVID-19?
So when I spoke to the representative of Boston Public Health, they told me to ignore the 2 weeks and to go by how I felt. And she told me if I stayed well for a total of 3 days without having any fevers or headaches, just 3 days symptom free, I was able to rejoin society. Because she said their symptoms typically are, they noticing they're starting to last more than just the 14 days. And I want to say I was sick for a total of a month and a week.
And how did you realize that you were better? What symptoms had immediately gone away?
I was starting to regain my taste back, and I was fever free for those 3 days. Um, and my headaches, they were gone. Those three things. Because the headaches would lead to dizziness and lightheadedness, and I would just go back to bed. But those 3 days, I had no headaches, no fevers, and I was able to regain my taste. I was like, okay, this is a good sign. I'm recovering.
And did you and your husband have a full recovery around the same time, or would it be different?
Um, I would say he felt better sooner than I did. He had different symptoms. He mainly just had a fever, and he had a fever and a headache. That was it. He still had an appetite. He still had a lot of energy, something I did not have. So for him, he felt better within 2 weeks. But me, it was different. So I want to say he recovered a lot sooner than I did.
And during quarantine, you mentioned that your siblings were in the hospital. What have been the methods of communication for you and your family, especially during that time?
We used well, we used FaceTime. We would use Facebook Messenger, texting, or just regular phone calls to keep in touch with one another. That was, I mean, if we if we were up to using FaceTime, like having the energy to actually lift up the phone, it would be FaceTime. Uh, but since we were kind of always tired, it was mainly just regular phone calls.
And how would you measure the importance of socialization during a pandemic?
Um, it's vital. Um, Human communication, human contact um, can make a huge difference mentally, emotionally. But as for me, since I thrive on that, just finding ways to socialize that doesn't mean to physically be present, uh, as in like be in the same room with one another, it can still happen. You can regain those batteries, and it reminds you that you're human when you socialize, and it reminds you that there's still good in the world and that you can still create bonds um, safely. And as long as you do socializing safely, either through Zoom or whatever other virtual outlet that you use, um, for now, that's the best thing one can do. And it just, I can say for sure after having even just a team meeting with my coworkers, um, after that, I just feel recharged and remotivated. Um, yeah, sorry.
Um, what methods have you used to keep yourself sane, per se?
Um, Methods. Um, I guess when you mean methods, do you mean like hobbies or?
Yeah, anything you do to kind of maintain some normalcy during this time to help uplift yourself.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I have a big passion for dancing. So I choreograph a lot of things at home. I I've gotten into embroidery. Uh, I have a Cricut machine. So though I know at this time I can't teach how to use it or anything like that, still making crafts with it and kind of helps. And gardening. My We have a small garden at my house, and kind of having myself on a schedule. Like I'll work this hour to this hour, and then I have my little 15-minute break. In that 15-minute break, I go out and I garden, I tend to it, check it, come back inside, have my tea, and go back to work. Um, After the workday is done, I listen to some music. I've um, I've gone back into anime again, full force, since there's a lot more time on my hands since I'm at home. So I'm rewatching a lot of animes that brought me joy when I was a kid. I'm rewatching a lot of movies that I watched from back in the 90s, from classic Disney to right now in October, scary movies that I used to watch as a kid. That has helped keep me grounded. Looking at family videos that my sister sends and photos of back when things were simpler, when I was like baby photos and stuff like that. That has reminded me that it's gonna be okay. It keeps me, like I said earlier, it just keeps me grounded. Like those things have really helped.
And in terms of your current jobs, you mentioned that you work at ATV and you also work at the Austin Public Library. How, after the pandemic hit, how have those positions changed? What were the adaptations like?
So for the pharmacy, our first priority has always been health, medicine, making sure everyone is okay. So what we now provide, which was a service we once used to charge for, which was prescription delivery. You have to meet a certain expectation in order to get it, like a certain amount of medications or prescriptions to be sent. And now it's free. After every customer, we clean our counters, we clean our card machines, and we have plexi, I guess plastic or plexiglass, whatever it is that they have as a barrier between us and the customer. We have to wash our hands or use sanitizer after every customer. We are wearing our face masks. We have to make sure we're socially distanced. We have to kind of pre-check ourselves before we go in. We have to ask ourselves, are we feeling okay? Do we have any fevers? Do we have any symptoms? And if so, we have to call our boss right away. Um, we are in constant communication with one another. Um, and we're we're just having to uh, make sure as well our customers are doing the right thing as well, and doing our part and informing them about what we can do and providing them with resources. And with the library, we're providing curbside services at some of our locations. We are doing a lot of online programming, online book clubs, um, online scavenger hunts and things for the kids, because their summer reading program was completely dashed. Making take and make crafts for the kids, and for adults and for families in general, and just trying to keep the the library alive, like the interest in the library, and um, still giving information to customers that are calling us and letting them know, like, yes, our location isn't open, but we're still here, ready to serve in whatever way we can. And sanitizing everything, like at the pharmacy, whatever we touch, like we're each designated a certain spot in the library that we have to clean twice, in the morning and twice in the evening before we leave. If we're gonna switch stations, having it clean our station from chair to keyboard to phone. Um, it's uh, getting to know. We're discovering slowly that these some of us are probably allergic to some of these cleaning chemicals, and having to start using gloves because they're very harsh. Um, yeah, that's that's what we've been doing. Just a lot of cleaning, basically.
And so for the public library, are you working back in the building now at this point?
For me specifically, I telework 2 days a week, and I help curbside at one branch, and the other days, yeah. So yes, we're back at the branch. We're back there. We're back there. Um, and yeah, sorry, keep bubbly.
And before transitioning until the point where you were able to go back in the building and start working in there again, when you were initially only working from home, what were the challenges of that like?
For me, since I guess you could say I'm a millennial, technology wasn't hard for me. Like finding things to do, finding trainings, and um, communicating through our new normal, which is Microsoft Teams, was easy. What made it difficult was for my other coworkers who um, weren't as familiar with tech and apps and stuff, and trying to keep them in the loop and help them. That that was difficult because when you work at a library, you work with these staff members every day. You're a team. You're practically a family, and so you're there to help them. They just can walk a few feet, and you're right there, and you can help them. Now we're each in each other's homes, and we have to help them that way. We have to do our best to how to like, let's just say our explaining skills have gotten that much better. Our step-by-step instructions have gotten that much better because of the fact that I can't be there to physically show them how to work certain apps, certain websites, how to sign up for certain things. um yeah.
And so, besides the current positions, you know, the work jobs that you hold, what organizations were you part of pre COVID-19 and now?
I'm part of the Victory Tutoring program. That's the main one that I'm in right now. So what Victory is, we are paired with a student, and we help them with specific subjects that the parent believes that they need help on. So it can range from um, math, English, science, reading, um, language learning, and the age group can go from kinder all the way to 12th grade. Um, and for me specifically, I have a student who is now in 4th grade, and helping her with math and reading. Those are the two main subjects that we are now working on. In the past, I've worked with university outreach and been a ministry school teacher, a child's ministry teacher at my old church
So,
before.
um, what what are you seeing in terms of technological barriers for the students that you tutor?
So in the beginning, when we began tutoring, having to introduce um, video chat, Zoom, and trying to get them to understand that this is how we're going to be communicating. This is how you're going to show me your work. This is how I'm going to be able to help you, versus being at the library, we're sitting across from each other and using a piece of paper, and her having her homework at the ready. Um, so that was a great adjustment. But thankfully, my student has now taught me some things on Zoom that I didn't know were possible. And she was able to tackle that challenge head on.
And from what is your specific role? You know, you're a tutor. What is your specialization? Is it just math? You mentioned math. Are there any others?
So, math, reading, and language learning. Since I could say I'm pretty fluent in Spanish, I help her with her fluency in Spanish too, and for her to grow confident in Spanish. Because I've noticed with the past student I had, he was pretty shy speaking Spanish. Um, he was either afraid that he was not saying certain words right, or for all I know, possibly getting bullied for knowing Spanish. Um, and in these times, I totally understand him. And my student now, she'll try and speak it with me, but she gets embarrassed. And so my goal is for her to be able to grow confidence in her speaking abilities and to kind of not be ashamed to speak Spanish. Spanish is actually a pretty cool language. And and she loves to write. She just doesn't um, sometimes doesn't know how to put her ideas together. And so I'm helping her with that, I guess, language arts. And yeah.
And what things you tell these students who might feel like there's a sort of embarrassment to talk, you know, Spanish if they're in an environment with predominantly English speaking people? What are kind of things you tell them to reassure that it's a part of their culture?
What I've told my students in the past is be that difference. I'm like, for all you know, with every word that you say in Spanish, with every sentence that you finish in Spanish, you are giving hope to those other students. You're being a light to them. You are opening doors to show them that it's not a bad thing to be different. It's not a bad thing to know another language, especially Spanish now. To be proud of who you are. And one day, someone may come up to you and they may be rude, or they may come up to you and tell you thank you because you gave them courage to be who they are. And that kind of, like, they start to feel better about it, because some kids are constantly being condemned for having only Spanish speaking parents, or them having to be the translators for their parents. And I remember when I was younger, I didn't like it. I felt embarrassed. But as I've gotten older, it's like, man, I was that gateway. I was that bridge for my parent. And I want to let these kids know that that they're bridges, that they're breaking barriers, breaking down walls by speaking Spanish and being proud to be part of the Latinx community. Like, it who we are as a culture is love, understanding, family, togetherness, community. And I let them know that, like, what's in your veins, what you have deep down in your heart is amazing roots that are based off of these values. So be different. And my little girl who I tutor, she's like, yeah, I shouldn't be afraid to speak Spanish then, huh? I'm like, no, not at all. Speak it. I'm like, and if you say a word wrong, somebody will either be there to correct it, or you can bring it to me later and I'll help you.
And have you been communicative with their parents during this time? And have they expressed any concerns to you in terms of their educational development at all?
So they don't speak directly to me. They speak to our coordinator, Chris Gonzalez, for Victory. And for the most part, uh, they feel like specifically for their child that she she is grasping some of the information, but to keep her on task is what they, I guess, would say they would kind of worry about, because now that she's at home, there's a lot more distractions. Everyone's at home, like her siblings and everyone. So their main concern is for her to able to finish her assignments, because they know she can. She's well and capable. It's just being easily distracted, and they want me to help her to stay on course and kind of put herself in school mode whenever she sees me.
And have you noticed any changes? You mentioned that you've been tutoring her even before the pandemic. Did you notice any significant changes in, her behavior, your other mentees' behaviors during isolation and during this big adaptation to online educational programming?
Yes, in the beginning, I remember our first meeting virtually in a very long time, and she just, her whole demeanor was different. She was more sad. She, I guess you can like whatever joy she had that we whenever we meet was completely gone. I remember she vocalized that she missed being around people, that she shared her story with me the day that they announced that school would be closing. She was leaving for an appointment, and she had to leave her backpack at school because she had thought she'd be back the next day, and then that later on she was told that she wasn't going to go back to school. She left her backpack there. So she had friends that were leaving, moving to a different school, and she wasn't going to see them again. Um, she wasn't that joyful young student anymore. Like, it was all gone, and like she was trying to find herself again, and it just really hurt because I knew there wasn't nothing much I could physically do to help her, but just try and tell her, well, this is what we have to do to keep each other safe. We care about our friends, so we have to be safe for one another. And it's like she understood what that meant. But when you're a child and you're developing um, and discovering yourself, it really takes a toll on you. And just seeing her just down and not really motivated to do much really, really affected me.
And did any of your mentees express concern to you, regarding the pandemic and the uncertainty that this all brings?
Yes, I remember her telling me she was she was like, "Will I get sick?" She was worried about her family and friends, and she was like, "Will I ever be able to hang out with my friends again? Will I ever go back to school? Will I ever get to go back to the library? Will I ever go back to see you?" And those are questions that we even today can't really answer. Um, Her main concern, will things go back to normal? Um, Really struck me because I really couldn't answer that except for we can hope. Um, and she had asked later, like recently, she's like, will it ever get worse before it gets better? And and all you can say is just, well, we have to take it day by day. I can't say it'll get worse or get better, but as long as we do our part, um, that's all that matters right now. And she's like, okay, I guess. So, yeah.
And, you know, have you seen any, or even in general, not just your mentee, and maybe this also applies, but what kind of difficulties do you see, this pandemic having an effect on the fundamental development of, young children in school, especially right now?
So social skills is one of the main things you learn in school. You learn how social cues, how to react, stuff like basics, how to communicate, when to say excuse me, um, or sorry, it kind of hits home because I think of her a lot. I just think of back when I was a kid and being able to be more hands-on because I was a visual learner and I like to have things in my hand. I like to be able to do them myself. And now kids are being restricted to computers to learn to communicate and solve problems. They're they're missing out on many experiences that I had as a kid. Field trips. I know that probably people are thinking like, how is that fundamental? It's like when you go to field trips, you get to experience things, and how does one learn in life is but through experiences, and their experiences are being cut short. They are losing a lot of these things. So yeah, sorry.
And, especially during these times, how do you kind of see the importance of an educational program like Victory, even before COVID and especially after? What is the value in a program like this and how important is it for, students?
You Victory, I feel like is very vital um, to the community. It helps parents um, with their students. Not only can their parents feel trust and confident that they're leaving their children with um, with people that are capable and trained to do this. Um, they're confident knowing that their child's going to come back home or be picked up. Uh, sorry, my phone. That they're confident that their child's going to learn a new skill. Um, Friendships are made during Victory. You're meeting people that you really wouldn't meet otherwise because Victory has a mod podge of students from different schools, different. So we have IDEA, we have REAL, we have AISD, we have KIP. And so all these students of different learning backgrounds are coming together and they're speaking to each other. They're sometimes one student may be in a grade above and they'll go over there and help the student if they don't understand it. Um, these college, it's mainly uh, fueled by volunteers. And so it's helping college students who may be interested in teaching get a little experience in that kind of field and giving uh, old retired teachers or people who always wanted to be a teacher an opportunity to um, help younger children form who they are and show them um, show them things that they typically probably wouldn't learn in school, techniques that we probably haven't used in such a long time, um, like the like I remember when I first heard of Victory and what it did and how important it is to be a volunteer in this organization. And it just, man, I'm bouncing everywhere because me just being a volunteer as a mentor has opened my mind and has like my perspective of things. Like it has helped me like develop my confidence and reassured me that yeah, you can and anyone can teach if they truly want to. And it's shown me that no matter your walk of life, you are welcome there with open arms. Like the moment I feel like a kid walks in there, any judgments that they would have had or whatever bad day they had at school, they walk in there and it's like a brand new day. It's a brand new start. And I feel like that's important to kids too. And yeah, it's like a little community in itself.
And so you mentioned Victory, collaborates with AISD, and you mentioned KIP and some other ones. Can you clarify what those are?
So yeah, so University Outreach was a program from University of Texas. It helped kids, 8th graders and above, so 8th graders and those in high school, help navigate the college scene, how to apply for colleges. We did college tours, and um, we had volunteer opportunities either there at the office, being an admin, like what I did. Um, I would help by reaching out to parents, reminding them about these great events that we would have, or a college tour, um, or I would help chaperone these events. And as taking it back to when I was a student, it showed me the different avenues I could take. That, yes, here's this college that's here at home, Austin, UT, but they would also show me, well, here's this college out in Corpus Christi that would probably fit your majors a little more. um, and it kind of helped to make you friends along the way. And with being a child ministry teacher, um, I would teach Bible lessons, certain Bible stories like um, Jonah and the whale, Adam and Eve, and basic Bible stories. So um, while the parents went to the big sermon with the pastor, I would help the kids in a fun way learn Bible verses and kind of feel more comfortable about their faith and what they believed in.
And so, how long have you been, volunteering with Victory now?
I've been volunteering for Victory going on for about 3.5 years, I would like to say.
And how did you find out about them?
I found out through when I first started working at Ruiz. It was my first job for the library at Ruiz, and I saw a lot of students coming in after school. And I remember I asked my boss at the time, I was like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, it's called a Victory. It's an after school program for students to get tutored. And I was like, oh, cool. That sounds like something I would like to do. But since I was only part-time, I couldn't really do it. But when I went on to full-time to Twin Oaks, and I spoke to Chris, and she gave me more in-depth detail what the program is and what the acronym Victory stands for, I was like, okay, this is the program for me, because the city does give you an opportunity to mentor 2 hours a week at different organizations, either actually go to the school and tutor or be a mentor or visit with them outside of school hours, or Victory. And it actually worked out since Victory is at the library where I work at. So I was like, okay, this is confirmation. This is a program for me. It's here at my branch. I can go in there and invest my time into someone that I know can make a difference in the world. So I was like, okay, this is the one for me.
And what does the acronym Victory stand for?
Ooh, volunteers in. See, and I memorized it for this interview, and it's leaving me. Geez, Chris, don't be mad at me. Volunteers in communities. TORY. Dang it. I know. I'm so sorry. I even looked it up and I memorized it, and now it's leaving me. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. So for when they take the kids to the library, would they bus them? How would the kids get there?
So majority of the time, either the parents would drop them off, before they either went to another job or we have quite a few schools around us at Twin Oaks. We have Becker Elementary, Galindo, and then we have what they call now Lively, and then we have Travis. And so some of them would take the bus there, some of them would be dropped off by parents, or some of them would just walk straight from school.
Okay, so just for the record of the interview, I went ahead and searched it up. It's Victories and Communities Tutoring Our Responsible Youth.
Yes, I was like, what's the R? I was like, respectable. Sorry.
Okay, so from, your almost 3.5 years of involvement in Victory and, working in educational programs before, and, you work for the public library, where did that interest in education come from?
I was tutored as a kid. Um, in kindergarten, I had a tutor because Spanish was my first language, so English was hard for me to learn, and so they gave me a tutor from kindergarten to first grade, and then I got into middle school, and I got another tutor, and I was thankful for that because I was struggling in math, and then I was a pally in middle school, so I had a pal. So it was pretty cool, and the impact that she left on me. And then in high school, I had a I had a guidance counselor and I had a tutor. So I guess you can say I've had a tutor most of my uh, school life, and all I can remember are good things that came out of each and every single one of those experiences, and they helped make me who I am today. And so I wanted to be able to provide that to someone else. I wanted to pay it forward. And I also wanted to credit a few teachers that made education fun and made it something that wasn't a drag. And I wanted to be able to also show that to kids. Like, yeah, we go to school 8 hours a day, and teachers can make a difference. How you're taught can make a difference. And I thought if I can also instill that into the future, then they will soon do that as well as they got older.
And, you mentioned having tutors in a lot of your educational life. What do you think not having those in your life would have been like for you now?
I probably would have not has been as social, and I probably would have been more closed off, and I probably would have struggled a whole lot more with asking questions, because I remember it was very hard to ask a simple question, but my tutors would always tell me, ask it because you never know, someone else might have that question too. And I feel like I wouldn't have been that person to ask questions or be able to have the courage to stay after class and seek more help. I feel like my perspective on the education system would totally be askewed because I would have let those negative experiences that I went through just be my main point of view of it.
And do you have any goals for the future in terms of your relationship with Victory, your educational programs in general?
I would love to stay with Victory for as long as I can. That is my goal, and to just keep spreading the word about Victory, because there's a lot more students out there that are waitlisted because there's not enough volunteers. And so either I can keep volunteering as a mentor or as a spokesperson for that organization, because I feel like it's such a vital and beautiful thing to have in the community. And just knowing that kids are losing a chance to experience this because there's not enough volunteers, or there's not enough space or whatnot, it's just not, it doesn't seem fair to me. So one way or another, either be a tutor or a spokesperson for that organization.
And when the pandemic, was just hitting, what were the immediate adaptations that Victory kind of had to instill to switch to this online format?
Immediately, it was even more communication that was already happening. Chris, our coordinator for our region, she was already in constant communication. Now it was times two the communication, and being ready and to for whatever transition that was made from Victory, and and getting that email of, hey, we're gonna be on Zoom now. This is our new normal, just Zoom. We're gonna figure this out together. That was it. No, being told that session that we had that week prior of closing, that was gonna be our last session one-on-one with our kid physically in person for a very long time.
And do you see for a future where you'd be able to be back in that library tutoring in person?
I would hope so. 2021 is what I'm looking forward to. I already know it's going to be very different. We're probably going to have like that little plexiglass and to be a little divider between us, or like have our own little cubby areas sporadic around the library. But my fear with that is that we're going to have to possibly limit the capacity of how many students can be in the library because of what will happen with the other patrons that are going to be in the library.
So now, moving on to a kind of general consensus of, this pandemic and the Latino community, how do you think, Latinos have been affected during this pandemic? What have been struggles that you've seen, maybe in general or within your own family?
So for me personally, this pandemic has affected my family in many ways. My sister who sorry my sister who works for a retirement home, the fear for her health, the fear for her to get better, the fear of her exposure. My dad, I go with him to the stores, and with all this other propaganda going on about Latinos and stuff like that, and my dad's primarily Spanish speaking. Whenever he speaks Spanish, the looks that he gets because of this set view that people have of Latinos. A lot of my friends, their parents worked in restaurants, and that now either they're out of a job and they can't work the way they would like to, and it's just for like in Latinos, when you think of Latinos, you think about big family gatherings, big parties, get-togethers, and the bread and butter of what we are, community and unity. It now looks different. You don't really see parties, family get-togethers the way you used to anymore. The bonds are not as strong because that's one thing we fed off of. We fed off of each other's energy, being in close proximity of one another, and now that's gone. I'm also noticing Latinos specifically are being targeted as a negative entity during this pandemic, and how we're just a nuisance sometimes. And when it comes to being taken care of, personally seeing that, because as Latinos, we're told, to kind of like tolerate, and oh, you'll be okay, home remedies first. And when I look up the Latino um, death rate during COVID, it's really shocking and it really hurts. And I feel like we don't get as great care as the other our other counterparts would be. um yeah.
And you mentioned the Latino community is a big group of people that are affected the most during this pandemic. And you mentioned going with your father to the stores. How have you tried to help him cope with this pandemic and make sure that he's staying safe during this time?
I call him and I text him, and I ask him if I'm making an order for the groceries and stuff. I ask him like, Dad, do you need anything? Do you want anything? I can get it for you. So, because I want him to stay home because he's also older. Um, I try and talk to him as much as I can. I will visit him uh, from a distance. Make sure he has face masks. Make sure he has sanitizer. Has the whole nine. And just letting him know that he can depend on me. It's his turn to let his daughter help take care of him.
And you also mentioned earlier how Latinos are in need of a lot of care during this time and they can be neglected because of that. So, how do you feel like the government maybe could have done a better job at that or can do a better job at helping, Latinx communities?
I feel like they could have taken it taken this a lot serious sooner, rather than, even, I feel like now they're not even doing the best of a job right now. But I felt like if they would have taken it sooner, and if they would have just used the proper outlets um to speak and inform, that probably would have helped. If they would have gone to more Latinx communities, provided more clinics, provided more testing sites. The amount of testing sites here in Austin are really far apart from each other in how long it takes to get tested. Like, me as an employee, they have a designated area for us, which is cool. Do I wish everyone else had that? Yes, I do. Like, when I scheduled um, my sister's appointment for her to get tested through Austin Public Health, she had to wait 6 days before she could get tested. And I'm just like, what? And she had to go, and the closest one is here at the Southeast branch. This is a Latino field community. This is a diverse, colorful community. And you're only going to put one testing site, but yet you're going to have two or like that just doesn't seem right. Like, if they were like more testing sites, making testing more available to the community, would help a whole lot more. Stressing the importance of social distancing, the importance of wearing a mask, the importance of staying home, and not just being very calm about it. Be like, oh, you're going to be fine. Like, oh, you want a testing site? Here's one. Like, that's been one of my biggest issues. And then I feel like they're kind of leaving the Latinx community to fend for ourselves, versus giving us the support that has been desperately needed in our communities forever.
And this lack of attention to the Latino communities that you mentioned, how do you think this kind of leans into the perspective of Latinos and how that can increase or what the outcome will be in terms of their involvement in the upcoming election.
It's gonna show, okay, you don't care about us, we're gonna find someone that actually does. Like, we weren't important to you, okay, we're gonna show you one way or another how important our voices are and how they've always been important, and we're gonna put our energy into someone that will be vocal for us from here on out.
And so, kind of to wrap up our interview here, is there anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you would like to touch on and just leave some last words here?
um well, because I feel like I might have sounded like negative or intense, but thank you for this opportunity to speak my mind and, have a voice, have an outlet. And during this time, it does feel difficult, but like my mom's number one verse was Romans 8:28. Everything will be turned around for good, and this is just a season. And to all of my Latinx community, um, our voices are going to be heard, like I said, one way or another, and we will and we can still make a difference. We're just gonna have to come together stronger than ever, safely, to make and be that difference.
Well, Ariel, thank you so much for being a part of the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History Project. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.